It is not,
I just want to mention to everyone here today, we posted on the Save America Foundation Facebook page that the National Guard in 50 states who are having to surrender their Apache helicopters to the US Army. We published that today, and in fact the Washington Times has just come out and verified it because I made a couple of calls to different units and they had heard it, but apparently Texas is possibly not going to go along with the plan, which would figure because that's Texas. But I think what's going to be happening is the Apaches, which they know could be used to great force in any military action, they're replacing all of those Apaches with some other helicopters, transport helicopters. So why? I've no idea. I have ideas. Well, that's not true. I do have ideas. America, I think, is saying if Operation Broken Spring does not work, I think the alternative is going to be bloodshed and firearms, and I don't see another option for it. And I think the government are preparing just for that. Taking away the Apaches from the National Guard, who they know will not be on their side, is a very strong statement, because that's an amazing weapon platform. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that the stuff that we do come out with first has now been verified by the Washington Times, because people were querying it. Alex Litka wants to talk. I just want to mention next month's meeting is going to be on the 15th of, 14th rather, which is a Wednesday. It's going to be all Save America Foundation speakers. We're going to have Alex, we're going to have Paul St. John, we're going to have Mark Adams, and Karen Schoen is coming down from North Florida. She's going to be talking about Agenda 21. She'll be the main speaker of the evening. And I think everyone knows that there's no one with more knowledge on Agenda 21 than Karen. So you can see the depth of the Save America Foundation, the type of people we have on the board and the type of people we have as members. You're going to meet four fantastic speakers, all on the director board of Save America Foundation next meeting, the 14th of May. Alex has got a few words to say, and then I'm going to be introducing our main speaker for the evening. So I'm going to hand this over to Alex. I don't think he needs a microphone, as you all know.
Yeah. Sorry about that. There's a lot of different ways in which we combat what is going on, either locally or statewide or nationally. I've come up here to talk to you about a lot of different subjects, so today I'm going to talk to you about one that's probably different than what I'm talking about in the past. How many people are familiar with what goes on in Tallahassee by show of hands? So a lot of people are not raising their hands because you're like, I really don't know what goes on up there. Do you guys know that last year they actually passed Common Core? You guys are aware of this, right? Or not aware of this? Yes. Did you know how they did it? I'm going to explain to you exactly how they did it and how they swerved us and how you really have to pay attention to what they're doing up there in order to understand how to combat it, at least in this aspect. Again, a lot of different ways to go about it. This is talking about dealing with legislators in Tallahassee. What they did was they had 5 different Common Core bills that were going through the House and through the State House and the State Senate. All of those bills were killed. Every one of them. So the question goes, well, if that's the case, then how the heck did they pass Common Core? Yeah. The way they did it is that in an unrelated bill, they changed one thing. It was one sentence. It was a one-sentence change. They said, Sunshine State Standards will now be referred to as the new Sunshine State Standards, and that those standards will be Common Core standards. Yeah. So we had a lot of people go up to Tallahassee and go to their legislators and say, hey, we want you to not do this. And they're like, good news, we're not going to pass any of this stuff. And you're like, yeah, we won, and we left. And they passed Common Core anyway. And your representative lied to you. Now, they didn't lie to you, but they're like sales guys. They only told you what they wanted in order to tell you enough to get you out of their hair. You also, you may or may not have been aware that a couple of years ago, they tried to put RFID chips in the driver's licenses. Now, when they did that, it was an amendment to another bill. Luckily, Paul Himmel person was like, well, I don't even know what's going on, because most of your representatives have no idea what's going on with these bills either. They're just as ignorant as anybody else. But we were able to stop that from happening. So that was actually something we were able to stop. So we have people up there that are specifically looking at the legislation, that are focused on it. You can put action alerts out to people at the right time in which to have an effect. That's why I'm coming to you and talking about a specific organization that does this specific thing. It's called the Liberty First Network. What we do is we have John Hallman, Paul Henry, and Danielle. They're lobbyists. They go up there and they lobby for good legislation and against bad legislation. But the more importantly than that is that they give you the information that you need to know in order to talk to your representative in an intelligent way, so you can get things stopped and you can get past the political speak with these guys. Because if you go up and say to a politician, you know, I want you to do this and this and this and this and this, and they're like, I know exactly how you feel, I feel exactly the same way, I'm up there fighting for you, hey, here's my cell phone number, give me a call at any time that you want, and they shove you along your way. And you're like, yeah, he's talking to me, he gave me a cell phone number, like, that's a really cool thing. You just got played. Whether you know it or not, you just got shoved off to the side, and you got told what you wanted to hear, and you got moved along to the side. But it's because it is very difficult to actually understand what the hell they're doing up there. For instance, most of the time, I have no idea how this stuff goes on up there. I'm not speaking to you from, I'm one of the experts. I actually go to these guys to figure out what the hell's going on up there. And then I can relay it that way. This is what the Liberty First Network does. What they do is a couple things. One, it's targeted responses. Look, you have your lives to lead. You got 50, 11 different things going on right now. You can't worry about contacting every politician every time for every issue that they have going on up in Tallahassee. What you need is specific time frames in which to specifically talk to the right representative that's dealing with the right issue. I'll give you an instance of what I mean by this. When a bill is a bill, when they set up a bill, it goes through bill drafting first. Once it goes through bill drafting, then a representative has to sponsor that bill. Now, anybody can put something through bill drafting. But in order to get a sponsor, one of the representatives has to do that. The Second Amendment Preservation Act. You guys remember this from earlier in the year. This is a great example of what can happen. You had a bill, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, it got through bill drafting, it went through Dane Eagle down in South Florida. Dane Eagle agreed that he was going to co-sponsor and put it up there. There was no Senate sponsor on the other end. It took a long time. We could never find anybody to do this. We didn't know why. Like, why is they already did a memorial on this last year. It's the same wording. Why not make it a real bill with some teeth? Well, unfortunately, we had people that were against us, namely Marion Hammer and the NRA. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to go, the NRA was against the Second Amendment Preservation Act? What are you, out of your mind? Exactly. They were totally against the Second Amendment Preservation Act. The reason that they were is that you have to look at the NRA as a national organization and not a state organization. As a national organization, they want something called reciprocity. Is that the right word?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
Yeah.
That means that you have a concealed weapons permit that is good in all 50 states. If you get it from one, it's good in all 50 states. Now that sounds like a really good idea, right? Like if it's good in one state, it should be good in all the states. It's not a good idea. The reason it's not a good idea is that each state needs to make that determination. And if we as a federal government, for the federal government, to enforce that upon those states, takes away the states' rights. Now, they want to be able to do that because the NRA makes money on that because they're the only people that can offer the classes for the concealed weapons programs. Imagine that. Join GOA. However, for this instance, for this bill that was going on up there, Marion Hammer did a very sufficient job of killing this bill. We cannot allow that to happen again. The bill has to make it through next session. Now, they didn't want anything controversial this year, which is why you're seeing very little of any substance go up there, except for the, give college tuition to undocumented, to illegal aliens or whatever. That was going to make it through, because they're trying to find for votes. But you need to have a certain amount of knowledge in order to speak to these people up in Tallahassee. It doesn't require a whole lot, it does require a little, but if you have that knowledge, and you go up and talk to your representative, it makes that conversation much more real. Because once they know that you know what's going on up there, then they have to change the way that they talk to you, and you'll have a much better conversation with these people. So one of the things that we do at the Liberty First Network is we put our action alerts. Most of our action alerts are done during the session. It's only like a 60-day session. It's a sprint up there. And they're putting thousands of bills in, and only like 100 of them make it into law. So there's thousands of things going on and 100 of them make it into law. That's it. Most of the other bills that are going on, though, have other purposes. I'll give you an instance. Everybody in here probably knows who Jeff Brandis is, right? You guys know Jeff, yeah? Jeff Brandis, Senator Brandis. You would be like, Senator Brandis is totally against the use of red light cameras. He puts up a bill every year to try to ban them. He's got to be against them, right? No. Now, he may claim he is, and he may say that he is. However, the unintended consequence of what happens is that his bill is a pawn. The pawn is that they put this bill up, and then the legislators go to ATS and all the other red light camera companies and say, hey, there's this bill up here, we're going to need some campaign contributions in order for us to kill this bill. Then they go along and they put it up there so everybody's feeling good, like, yeah, let's go get this done. And yet every year it doesn't pass. 1 year they let it go through the House, it doesn't go through the Senate. 1 year it doesn't go at all. What's going on here? They're using us as cannon fodder, whatever you want to call it, to get more money from ATS. Something else that just happened up in Tallahassee. Now, how many people drink beer here? Okay, some people do, right? Okay. There's these things called microbreweries. I'm sure you've seen them all around the state before. Microbreweries are gaining in popularity. However, the beer distributors, because we work with a three-tiered system. You have the brewer, the beer distributor, and then the end person that sells the product out there. And then the way the system works is that you can't be all of them. The system itself is kind of BS. However, what happens is these microbrewers started going out there and selling beer, and they got about 5% market share. So what do? They want to pass a law now that in order for that brewer to sell his beer, he has to sell his beer to a beer distributor and then buy his own beer back from the distributor and then sell his own beer. Meanwhile, the beer distributor will never ever pick up the beer. Never. He basically is, the beer distributor is cutting a check to the mob to sell his beer. Now you're thinking, well, why would they do something like this? Go back to following the money. Because the beer distributors give hundreds of thousands of dollars to our politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, in order to keep that government-controlled monopoly alive. Now, the next question you're going to say if you're a non-beer drinker is, well, I don't drink any beer, I don't give a crap what they do. What does it matter what they do? Well, look, most of the time, they're still giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians, and they're not setting a law that's against them. But if you want to know why you can't get grassroots candidates elected, it's because these big major corporations, the beer distributors that have a government monopoly on what we do, are funding the candidates for all the other crap that you don't like. So even though you may not ever go to a microbrewery a day in your life, and maybe because you never like beer at all, doesn't mean that that issue is not important to you. The reason it's important is the amount of money that they're making from those people are what they're using to get reelected into office to make sure that guys like Tony have about as hard of a chance as possible to ever win up in Tallahassee. But this information is not something that you're going to hear in a lot of other places. One of the reasons why is because it is complicated. It is complicated stuff. I mean, it's, again, John, Paul, and Danielle do phenomenal work in dealing with it. However, in doing that work, it is stuff that is very complicated. Everybody heard about the what's the Sharia law bill? What is that called?
American
laws for
American laws for American courts, right? You guys heard this bill, you're like, okay, that's a great bill. There's no way that bill's messed up, Alex. You're out of your mind. There's no way that bill's messed up. That's a good bill, damn it. It's not. Here's why. Those laws that they're about to set into place mean that if you go to a Catholic church, if you go to a Jewish church, if you go to a Christian church, and you do arbitration within those churches, that will not be considered illegal. Even though you went into private arbitration, even though you volunteered to do that, the way they've written the law makes it for everybody. Not just for one, not just for Muslims, it's for everybody. That's why you have to know what they're doing up there. You have to know that just because they say something is good, remember, they're like car salesmen. Are you going to trust what the car salesman says, or are you going to read what you're going to sign? Because the bill is what you're going to have to sign, because that's the law that they make. We have to be more educated on those things. And that's what we do at Liberty First. If you'd like to get legislative updates, before you leave tonight, there's just a little sign-up sheet. Make sure you sign up on that stuff. And we send, like I said, we send John and Paul up to Tallahassee, and they just walk around going to all the legislators. But what we do is before we go in there, we flood their lines. By flooding their phone lines before we go in there, that means John and Paul get in front of the line. Now, one of some of the successes that they've had, you remember, you guys know the drone bill that passed up there?
Yeah.
Along with the Libertarian Party of Florida, Danielle, but John and Paul went up there, they locked into that bill. Well, they gutted it. But there still were some protections in there, so drones are not able to just fly freely over the state of Florida because of John and Paul's efforts. When it came to the RFID chips, John Paul and Danielle's efforts, Danielle's efforts. Because of John and Paul, Real ID, the RFID chips are not in your driver's license. They tried to mandate and this was like just a week and a half ago, they tried to mandate that the way they changed the red light camera law is you had to go to a municipal court, like a local kangaroo court, a magistrate court in your local city. They were about to mandate that in a bill where they were going to lower the fine to $100, but then you had to go to the magistrate, which is a kangaroo court. It's not even, I'm arguing it's not even constitutional. But they were about to do that where you had to go there instead of being able to go to a jury trial and going over to, to deal with your actual court system.
Elected judicial review.
Yeah. This stuff happens all the time up there. So if you really want to be in the know on that, again, sign up back there, whatever. We try to post things out whenever we can. We'll make sure we send more stuff to SAF to make sure it posts on there. But it's all state issue stuff. Again, it's real wonky too, by the way. So just so you know, it's really wonky stuff. So if you're a legislative person like myself that really likes digging into this stuff, then it's fun to do. If not, if anything, if you're like, well, I'm not really going to get into all that stuff, then sign up to make sure you get an action alert so you can melt these guys' phone lines at the right time. Because it's really a key to making sure that we can stop what they're doing in Tallahassee and being able to effectively influence what they're doing in Tallahassee. I know there's a lot of arguments back and forth in the movement between should you stay in the GOP or should you, go third party, libertarian, or something else like that. I'm not going to get into that argument with you, but if you really do want to be able to influence what they do, you can go to the rec and try to influence what's going on there, but they passed a thing for Common Core that they didn't like it and they still passed it in Tallahassee. I'd argue skip the middleman and go to the source. Because the source up in Tallahassee is the problem. And if you go up there, and I guarantee you this, if you get a chance next legislative session, do me a favor. Schedule a day and walk up in Tallahassee. Don't bring any firearms with you. Because you may want to shoot somebody while you're up there. That's fine. So go up there and spend a day walking around there, and it will give you an entirely different viewpoint on where the problem lies. Because there's a lot of problems up there. But like I said, just want to make sure you guys are aware of that, of what's going on, because there's a lot of different ways to fight this thing. And I'm not saying one way is better than another way. All of them are good. Just make sure that you can do some of the timely things to stop some of the crap that they're laying on us in Tallahassee, and we take care of that. So, again, thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Okay, I want to introduce our main speaker tonight. She's retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Debbie Gunno. She's gracing our presence here all the way from Navarre, Florida. She's going to be speaking with us on Common Core education. Debbie retired from the USAF in 2008 as a Lieutenant Colonel. She doesn't hold any degrees, educational degrees. However, she worked many years in the education, training and evaluation area while on active duty, to include the Air War College, a senior level officer school. She considered becoming an administrator through the Troops to Administrators program, and instead, as a constitutional conservative and a member of Oath Keepers, Debbie became deeply involved in stopping the unconstitutional overreach of the federal government. Introduced to the Common Core program in 2010, she recognized the need to stop the nationalization of education on steroids here in its tracks, and picked up the fight to do just that. She freely presents what you'll hear here today in order to educate parents, teachers, administrators, and elected officials on the truth of Common Core. I give you Debbie Gunno.
Because I'm not one to stand in a
feedback. First of all, get this started so I stay on time, because I'm a talker, and I will talk your ear off, and if I don't stay on target, then we're going to have a problem. And what was just talked about, by the way, is extremely important, and there are two people in Tallahassee. There are actually three people in Tallahassee that are most powerful people in Florida. That's your Speaker of the House, your President of the Senate, and your unelected Commissioner of Education. So, outcome-based education, not Common Core. And the reason why it's not Common Core is because it's outcome-based education. Common Core happens to be just the most recent name of what's been going on for almost a century. Stalin understood that America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is threefold. It's patriotism, it's morality, and it's spiritual life. And if we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. Lenin also understood that if you control the schools, you control the kids. If you control the kids, you control the state. And finally, the 10th plank, the Communist Manifesto, is to take control of the education system. And that's exactly what's been going on for nearly a century. Outcome-based indoctrination. I do not call it education because it's not. It is actually indoctrination. It is the scenario behavior modification using his principles to actually deliberately dumb down our kids and turn them into little robots. There's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Spady that was involved in education policy back in the 70s, and he was very candid when he spoke to a conference in 1982. And he said, which, by the way, mastery learning is a precursor to Common Core, one of the previous names, but he said, mastery learning has a hidden agenda. And the hidden function of mastery learning is a system of supervision and control which restrains behavior of kids. The outcome of the hidden agenda should be the fostering of social responsibility or compliance. What we are doing is we are allowing our children to be turned into little unquestioning, compliant workforce widgets. You know, there's not been a whole lot that's been done about it over the years. But they're very open, they're very honest about it. I'm not keeping up, am I? Uh-oh, sorry about that. Yell at me. So, what does school really teach? Truth comes from authority. Intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat. Accurate memory and repetition are rewarded. Non-compliance is punished. And if you conform, you will be intellectually and socially acceptable. Arnie Duncan, our Secretary of Education, he also has been very quite candid about what he thinks needs to be done within our schools. You can read them up here. I can skim through them quickly, but basically he believes that the federal government needs to be in control and have a greater role in our kids' education. He thinks we need to be able to track our children from womb to tomb, and that is exactly what they're doing with the data mining. And he also says that America is now in the midst of a quiet revolution in school reform. And to cite just one example, the Department's Race to the Top program. Progressive education reformers, the communists, the Marxists, that's the kind word for them, call them what they are, say children belong to all of us. There have been a number of people that are involved in the administration today that have come right out and said exactly that. The children belong to the government. They belong to the collective. And they are working very, very diligently to make sure that that takes place. Outcome-based education, Common Core, Florida standards, whatever name you want to give it, and I'll refer to it as Common Core from here on out. You've got the picture. Is yet another ill-conceived, poorly executed social experiment gone awry at the expense of our children and society. You can see up there the two monsters that we've got are Bill Gates and Jeb Bush. Mark Levin, in his Liberty Amendments, said social engineering, hold on. Oh, we're not there yet. But he said social engineering and central planning are imposed without end, since the governing masterminds, drunk with their own conceit and pomposity, have wild imaginations and infinite ideas for reshaping society and molding man's nature in search of the ever-elusive utopian paradise. Their clumsy experiments and infantile pursuits are not measured against any rational standard of piousness and sanctimony or justification enough. We are down this road, and I'm afraid that we're down it so far that there's no point of return. So, here is what has happened and what has brought this all about, and why I say it's been around for about a century. John Dewey, late 1800s. He was a self-proclaimed Marxist. He changed the philosophy of our education system and what schools were meant to do. He said schools were not to be centers of education, they were to be training centers to turn out a workforce for the collective. He espoused that philosophy and gained a following. That following grew, and in the 1920s, they started putting into effect what is now referred to as outcome-based education. They didn't have that title back then, they just knew that they wanted to change their school system to make it a training center. So, they called him the father of progressive education, and they started the progressive education reform movement. In 1965, LBJ signed into effect the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That was the first time that we had the tentacles of the federal government in our school system. That is what brought about all the title money. And if you needed the title money for your schools, and let me tell you right now that there is no correlation between the amount of money we throw at education and the success of educating our children. But if the schools feel that they need that money to run those schools, they will do exactly what the federal government tells them to do in order to qualify for that title money. Outcome-based education came into effect in the mid to late 70s in earnest. They put it into place. It was called mastery learning, direct instruction, fuzzy math, sight words, whole word learning. They dropped the tried and true methods of educating our children, Saxon math, phonics, cursive writing, but cursive didn't drop out till much later. But they dropped all the good things and brought in all of the problems. And the reason they do this is these progressive education reformers, the Marxists, the communists, the way they get this into the system is they say, we've got a problem. There's a problem with our education system and we have the solution. And so let us put the solution into effect. And so that's how they overcame all of the tried and true methods of teaching and educating and put into place these untried and failing processes. U.S. Department of Education came about. Oh, by the way, my daughter, who is now a high school science teacher, was in the education system starting in 1980 and then, graduated in the 90s. But she is a product of that outcome-based education that was put into effect back in the 70s and 80s. She cannot spell. She learned to read by sight reading, by word, just recognizing words. She reads very well, but she has her problems, and you can see it. She is a science teacher, as I said, and the areas that she had the hardest time in those science courses was for math. And that's because they didn't teach her how to do math. They taught her how to do these crazy little processes of math. But the U.S. Department of Education came into play in 1980, and actually 79. Under Carter, Reagan ran saying that he was going to do away with the Department of Education, but I don't know how many of you are tried and true Reagan supporters, but Reagan didn't do us a whole lot of favors in the education arena. He actually signed an agreement with Gorbachev to globalize our education system. And I have a dear friend, Charlotte Iserbyt, who was fired for being a whistleblower about that agreement. She worked in the education department, the U.S. Department of Education at that time, and she brought it to everyone's notice that that's exactly what he did, and that she was fired. But it's been a blessing for all of us because she has done about 50 years worth of research, and that's how I know about what's going on here. We did not obviously do away with the U.S. Department of Education. It is unconstitutional. It is against every principle of state sovereignty, and it is nowhere in the Constitution that the federal government has any responsibility whatsoever to educate our children. National History Standards, 1995. What happened was that U.S. Department of Education said, and there was actually a sub-department, said, we are going to write these standards and put them out there. But those standards were so horrible. They were completely out of whack, anti-American. I got a little bit later about the lessons learned from the 1995 National History Standards, but they were so bad that the U.S. Senate actually passed a resolution 99-1 that you wouldn't have national curriculum standards of any kind levied onto the states. Of course, that hasn't done us much good. And to the day where we have complete nationalization of our education system. Mastery learning, direct instruction, as I said, goals 2000, school to work, no child left behind, and now Common Core. Satan's seven-pronged fork. They use this process to change our education system and a lot of the rest of America. But one is gradualism. I call it incrementalism. It's that two steps forward, one step back. And they are willing to sacrifice that other step because they know if they're patient, they can then turn around and implement a little bit more, a little bit broader, a little bit deeper, and they're going to get this eventually to where they have it completely put in place, where they have control of our school systems, and that is where we are today. The Hegelian dialectic, as I said earlier, they will find something and say, there's a problem, we've got the solution, let's put the solution into effect. But what we have here is we didn't have a broken education system. It wasn't broken at all. Matter of fact, it fueled an industrial revolution and it put man on the moon. But there was nothing wrong with it. And even if it was that there was something wrong with it, they never did bring the teachers in to help them fix it. It was always those progressive, Marxist, communist reformers. Semantic deception, redefining terms, 100% conservative and liberal media control, endless supply of money. I'll talk about that a little bit, but we have that today through a certain couple of foundations and people. Brainwashing, and then keeping the public unaware that both political parties are the same, and that they no longer support the concepts of free enterprise, the U.S. Constitution, and the religious principles that place God above man. This has absolutely no scientific foundation. This is my drawing. This is my graph. But this is what I see when I get into all this that I'm talking about. Because back in the 70s, we put outcome-based indoctrination into place, and from that point, the American knowledge base has gone downhill to the point where we are, and these are firm numbers that come from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that tracks this. Globally, we're 17th in reading literacy, 21st in science, and 26th in math. They've been very, very, very successful. All right, lessons learned from 95. As I said, the standards were just horrendous. It was a national history standards project that was tied to UCLA. They sought to embrace non-white cultures. Some complained they belittled Western culture in the name of multiculturalism. I wouldn't claim it. I would say it's a fact. That's exactly what they did. There were very few references to George Washington. They failed to mention the Constitution, and a lot of the very historical figures, our founding fathers, all that, were eliminated from the studies, from the curriculum. As I said, Senate Resolution 66, which was non-binding, but it passed 99-1. And here's what they learned. You don't call it national. You do it quickly and quietly. You do it when the legislature is not in session, and you take non-controversial subjects to implement it. That's exactly where we are with Common Core. Legislature did not vote on Common Core. Charlie Crist and the Commissioner of Education were the only two that said we would accept Common Core, or actually the race to the top money. And I'll get into how that was all decided. But they did it very quickly, very quietly, because parents, they didn't want to get them all upset and aware of what they were trying to accomplish. And they picked math and English language arts because they knew that they could get away with putting standards against those and not the other studies. So, you want answers? You want the truth? Well, guess what? You can handle the truth. I know you can. But Bill Gates, in his 2009 speech, the National Council of State Legislatures, said we need to take 2 enabling steps. We need longitudinal data systems that track student performance and are linked to the teacher, and we need fewer, clearer, higher standards that are common from state to state. The standards will tell the teachers what their students are supposed to learn, and the data will tell them whether they're learning it. When the tests are aligned to the Common Core standards, see that? When the tests are aligned to the Common Core standards, the curriculum will line up as well. One of the pushbacks that you will get from our legislators is that, and also school boards and school superintendents, they're only standards. They don't mandate the curriculum. They're only standards. Well, guess what? The standards are copyrighted, and they're owned by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers. 85% of the curriculum will be from those copyrighted standards, and 15% can be added in. But that 15% will not be tested. Only the 85% will. And all states and districts should collect common data on teachers and students. That endless supply of money comes from Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they have given multiple millions of dollars to Jeb Bush. Florida, we have a problem. We are not only fighting Common Core, we are fighting a legislature that bows at the altar of Jeb Bush. And he is the one that is the puppet of Bill Gates and is the one that is ensuring that we will have Common Core implemented here in Florida. He received $5.1 million from the Gates Foundation. He received $3.2 million from the GE Foundation, and he received $1 million from the Broad Foundation. Those are foundations that want to make sure that they have good little unquestioning workforce widgets. They don't care about having educated people because they don't want to have questions. They want people to just do their work. All right, how did we get this? American Reinvestment and Recovery Act of 2009. Obama took and handed Arnie Duncan and the U.S. Department of Education $4.35 billion with a B dollars. And he said, oh, good. I'm going to set up a competitive grant program called Race to the Top because I know that the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers have brought together a nonprofit organization called Achieve Inc. And they have written these wonderful national standards. Oh, wait a minute, they're not national. Can't call them that. They've done these wonderful standards that are going to be more rigorous and they're going to make our children think critically, and they're going to just, make the United States stand heads above all the rest of the countries with educating their children. So he said, all right, race to the top. That's what I'll do. So they went out, this was in 2009. The money was given, if I remember, it was like in February. In July, they had the Race to the Top grant program ready, sent it out to the states. The states had to have their applications in by November, if I recall correctly. No, the applications went out September, and they had to be in November. They had 2 months. The states had 2 months to complete the applications for the Race to the Top grant. And 45 states said, yeah, we'll do it. But what they had to do was they had to agree to do all this. They had to do Race to the Top, Race to the Top, they had to turn around lowest performing schools. They had to recruit, develop, reward, and retain teachers and principals. They had to set up Common Core state standards and the testing that went along with them. And they had to do the statewide longitudinal data systems, the data mining. Arnie Duncan wanted to make it mandatory to put Common Core into place, but he could not. He was counseled, said, don't do it. Remember 95? We can't make it mandatory. We've got to make it look like these standards are state-driven. So what they did was they called them the Common Core state standards and said, you states want that money, you're going to adopt them. It's your choice. We're not mandating it. So, all of these, the more we agreed to do, the better we qualified for the money, and Florida got $700 million. It was voted on after the fact, because I remember sitting in the state legislature, and I had my senator, newly elected, newly in position, Greg Evers, come up to us when we were sitting in Tallahassee, the Tea Party Network. And he came in and he said, tell me what I should do. Should I vote for it? Should I not vote for it? $700 million, what should I do? And we said, we don't want it. Don't vote for it. It's coming with strings attached. Turn it down. So he went and voted. Then he came back and explained to us why he voted for it. So we were stuck with Common Core. All right. I don't know how many of you are on Facebook, but you've probably seen these pictures going around. A little girl down here in the bottom right is a cancer survivor, and she has special needs. And she is sitting in tears every night. I can tell you story after story after story because I go out and speak. on this with parents coming up to me and saying, my second grade daughter, who read well beyond grade level, who loved school, will not pick up a book, and she's making excuses for not going to school. What are we doing to our kids? Well, let me explain real quick, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, because I know I'm running low on time. But these are a lot of examples of what they're doing. English language arts is first. It is indoctrination. It's all the same. It looks good. It's the same. What this does, and I know you can't see it, but it's basically possessive nouns, and they have to take a sentence and reconvert it to where it's showing a possessive, so in other words, the job of the president is not easy. So change it to possessive, which means the president's job is not easy. Let's see. He makes sure the laws of the country are fair. Now, focus in on that word fair. Fair has got to come up again. The commands of the government officials must be obeyed by all. The wants of an individual are less important than the well-being of the nation. So, this is an English language arts assignment. Here's another one. What this one has to do, and again, you can't see it, because I just put them up here so I can talk to them. This one has, I forget how many people it is. You can count them, but anyway. Don't have enough dialysis machines for all these people that need to be on dialysis, okay? So they give you all of the factors about these people. Male, female, age, ethnicity, all that stuff. Whether they're married or not, whether they have children or not, what their ages are. You have to pick which ones get the dialysis and which ones are going to die. These are assignments. I'm not making these up.
What grade is that, Debbie?
This one, if I recall correctly, was middle school.
What's the school accepting the answer on that? Obviously, there's triage. We're always going to have that. But what the hell direction do they want their kid? Who do they want to?
They don't care. They don't care. They're desensitizing children to death. They don't care.
We're going to have a question and answer session after this. If we can hold the questions, we'll do a presentation. We're going to have 10-15 minutes of questions after this, if that's okay with everyone.
And then there's this one where the little girl wrote about her hero being Jesus. She was told that she could not write about Jesus. This went home. She got an F on this assignment. Her mother came and talked to both the teacher and the administrator of the school. She walked away with her daughter because she was told, your daughter cannot write about Jesus being her hero.
Some of you who have small children may have perhaps been put in the embarrassing position of being unable to do your child's arithmetic homework because of the current revolution in mathematics teaching known as the new math. So as a public service here tonight, I thought I would offer a brief lesson in new math. Tonight, we're going to cover subtraction. This is the first room I've worked for a while. It didn't have a blackboard, so we will have to make do with more primitive visual aids, as they say in the ed biz. Consider the following subtraction problem. Try to put up here. 342 minus 173. Now, remember how we used to do that. 3 from 2 is 9, carry the 1. If you're under 35 or went to a private school, you say 7 from 3 is 6. But if you're over 35 and went to a public school, you say 8 from 4 is 6. Carry the 1, so you have 169. But in the new approach, as you know, the important thing is to understand what you're doing rather than to get the right answer. Here's how they do it now. You can't take 3 from 2. 2 is less than 3, so you look at the 4 in the tens place. Now that's really 4 tens, so you make it 3 tens, regroup, and you change the 10 to 10 ones, and you add to the 2 again. commuted it, right? And so you got 13 tenths, and you take away 7, and that leaves 5. Well, 6 actually, but the idea is the important thing. Now go back to the hundredths place. You're left with 2, and you take away 1 from 2, and that leaves. Everybody hit 1? Not bad for the first day. Hooray for you, math. Here, Google Math. It won't do you a bit of good to read you math. It's so simple, so very simple, that only a child can do it. Now that actually is not the answer that I had in mind.
We don't have enough time to go through the second part, but you do have to keep a sense of humor about all this, or you're gonna go crazy. I lost my mind and I had my head explode at least,
No, I'm sorry. I lost my mind, had my head explode at least a dozen times already going through this. So, here's the old-fashioned way, and here's the new way. And that's just one of the reasons. Now, let me explain to you what's going on. I've talked with math teachers who have said, not all kids learn the same, so we need to teach them different ways to accomplish the same calculation so that they can, figure out how to get the right answer. Well, unfortunately, they're not worried about getting the right answer anymore. They're only worried about the process. And not only do they have to learn the way that they learn, but they have to learn the way that everybody else learns. So you're going to learn multiple ways of doing math. So the kids are inundated. They want them to understand the concept of numbers. It has nothing at all to do with the calculations. And they really don't care, and I'll show you an example in just a minute. But they really don't care if you get the right answer or not. I'm going to skip through these pretty quickly, but just so you can get a feel for the different types of ways that they teach kids about how numbers have concepts. This one's using base 10 blocks and dashes. This one is figuring out how you make 10 to subtract from, basically what they're saying is 2 plus 8 equal 10, and then that means that 4 plus 6 is 14, so 14 minus 8 equals 6. Again, the numbers, they don't care about the calculations. It's do you understand the sense of numbers? You can come up and look at these. Here's one assignment. It's a 3rd grader's Common Core math homework. The assignment is match the picture with the fraction that names the shaded part. Who can see what's wrong with this page? No shaded parts.
Homework. Make sure this is lesson 5.1, number 1 in your homework. We have 36 minus 7. I'm going to break apart 7. This is one strategy. I start with the number 6. 6 plus what equals 7? Well, I know 6 plus 1 equals 7. Right away, Sean, or anybody else, I know that if I take away 6 from 36, take away that 6, I have 30. So now I take out that number, I take away 1 more, and I have the difference of 29. Now, another strategy to do, you don't need to break apart your ones. You can just do 36 minus 7. You can go, okay, 36, 35, 34, 33, 32, 31, 30, 29. You're going to get the same answer. To do this strategy right here, you have to be really, really solid at counting back. So you choose, if you need to break apart your number, remember, start with your ones. Start right away, because that's easy. Right away, I know, I take away that number from my ones. And my number over here, I know right away the number's going to just be, boom, cross that. Take away 1 more, I'm at 29. Do whatever strategy works for you. Again, this is number 1 of your lesson 5.1 homework.
Now these are elementary kids, okay? Common Core in Florida was implemented last year, kindergarten, 1st grade, this year through 2nd grade. And in February, at the state school board meeting at which I went and spoke, they voted unanimously against all 100 of us that got up and said Common Core is ridiculous and we need to stop it in Florida, put our kids first and get them educated and not indoctrinated. And they said no, K through 12, next year. Thank you very much. So here's the one I was telling you about. It doesn't matter whether you get the answer right or wrong, or I mean right, as long as you show that you understand the concept of numbers, right? Poor little girl, second grade, again, first time she would have had 100 on her math test. Would have really built up her desire to learn, right? Especially math. And she got one wrong. I don't know if you can see it or not. Well, it's not up there. But anyway, her answer was, I actually have the sheet, not this one. But it showed that the teacher marked it wrong. She had 13 minus 7 equals 6. And it was in the column right next to the question. But she had chosen the wrong process. So she got it wrong, even though the answer was right. Understand, it's not about getting the numbers and the answers right or wrong. It's about understanding the numbers and concept. And then there's this one. I don't have enough time to get into it, but basically, you know, we're getting into ridiculousness when it comes to our math. I was asked by a friend whose daughter is attending school in Ocala, that's Alachua County, and she said she's failing math, she's having a really hard time struggling, she's in middle school, 7th grade. And she said, would you please go look at her textbook and tell me if it's a comic book problem or is it something that she needs help on or, you know, what it is. So I went into the math book and started tearing it apart. Online, by the way, online, and I'll show you something in a minute. But I got to this one. Determining fairness. Remember me telling you to remember fair? Work with a partner. Write a ratio for each sentence. Compare the ratios. If they are equal, then the answer is, it is fair. They're giving you the answer, okay? So if they're equal, it's fair. If they are not equal, then the answer is, it is not fair. And explain your reasoning. Well, you know, the first one was that somebody paid $184 for 2 tickets, the other one paid got 3 tickets for $266. You're supposed to determine whether it's fair or not that they paid what they paid for the amount of tickets that they got. Life's not fair. There are other reasons that enter into this. One-dimensional math, you know, numbers do not work, you know, in determining fairness because somebody may have gone early, they might have got a discount for, you know, bulk order, who knows what. But our kids are being taught that if it's equal, it's fair. If it's unequal, it's not fair. Income inequality enter anybody's mind?
Communism.
And this is what happens when high school wrestlers assign common core algebra. He tore his book. That same math book that I told you I tore apart, I looked at the online version. Now, all I was on there, and you can't see them, and I've got these on bigger boards out in my car, but I didn't figure I had the time to really show you. But overplaying on the left-hand side was this video ad for a video game, and it kept saying, play free, play free, play free. And the name of the game is League of Angels. And these ladies are scantily clad with legs up to here, a waist that's this big, and very well endowed, and hardly any clothes on. And this is playing in a 7th grade math textbook online. Now, I went back in and found that they'd scrubbed it. It's not there anymore. What is it? My Dear Aunt Sally, I think now is in its place. But this is the same textbook, Alachua County. They're also using it in Santa Rosa County, where I live. Assessments real quick, because I know I'm running out of time. Pam Stewart, again, Commissioner of Education, appointed, not elected. Our state board of education, appointed, not elected. We have no say-so over their hiring or their firing. She just, in March, selected, and I said she, now that's singular, that's not a group, that's not the legislature, that's not anybody but an elected, appointed person, one sole individual, selected our replacement for the MCAT. And the company it's not a company, it's an organization. It's a non-profit organization. And is writing the replacement for FCAT. I'll get into the details on them next slide, but the SAT test, I know y'all heard recently in the news how it's been modified. They only talked about the surface stuff. They had talked about the fact that the whole test is being Common Core aligned. So, what to do? You got kids that don't get the Common Core education because they're homeschooled, they're in private school. And by the way, private school and homeschooling is not safe from Common Core. How are they going to fare on the SAT test when they aren't educated in the idiotic ways of Common Core and they go in and take a test for college entrance and they don't understand the questions? Go to schools that don't require SAT. Okay, AIR, one of the world's largest behavioral and social science research and evaluation organizations. They're proud of it. They conduct and apply the best behavioral and social science research and evaluation towards improving people's lives with a special emphasis on the disadvantaged. And they have a homosexual agenda. It's called LGBTQI2S. Never seen or heard anything like that before in my life. The first four letters, LGBT, yeah. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual. He was questioning. I is in between, and 2S is to spirit. And that goes back to the non-gender assessment done in the American Indian tribes. Because they, for years, if somebody didn't fit in this gender or that gender, they were kind of in that two-spirit gender. So, and their clients are Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the College Board. By the way, David Coleman, who's the president of the College Board, who's making those SAT tests Common Core compliant, wrote the English Language Arts standards for the Common Core. He's not an educator. Council of Chief State School Officers, Microsoft, Open Society Institute. Who knows who that is? One of their clients. And also the alphabet soup of government agencies to include the Departments of Commerce, Defense, Labor, and Justice. So, college and career readiness, right? Nope. When they tell you that they are preparing kids to be college ready, you're talking a non-selective community college. Not talking four-year school. Especially not talking places like Harvard and Yale and, all those other ones. Florida State, University of Florida. So, it's not doing what they want it to do. Well, it is doing what they want it to do. It's not doing what we want it to do. It's not educating our kids. Data mining, it's going on. People will tell you it's not, but it is. This is an example of, yes, it is. This is a parent's response back to a first grader's list of things that they need to respond about. This one in particular is sexual identity issues. First grader. It's a checklist. It's a psychosocial checklist. Gather information on the children, and the children will go down this list with their parents and indicate those things that they, have issues with, or, they're placed in foster care. There are a number of psychosocial issues that are there, and you check them off. And so anyway, this dad said, you're not getting that information, not on my child. There is a U.S. Department of Education report that I have. It is called Promoting Grit, Tenacity, and Perseverance. In this report, Big report. Uh-oh, I'm supposed to be done. I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Quick. Here we go. You will find that they want to gather information on our children through these technologies. Now what they'll do, facial expression camera, posture analysis seat, pressure mouse, conductance sensor, the children will be hooked up to all of these devices as they're sitting at their computer doing their assignments. And they will take and, measure all of this, including their facial expressions, and they will come up with a psychological profile on that child to determine how that child needs to be trained and which job areas that child is most suited for.
Or not so good.
Yeah. So bottom line to it is, it's evil. Pure, unadulterated evil. Because they don't want children or parents making decisions about the future of their children or which area that child. My daughter in 4th grade said, "Mom, I want to be a teacher." In 4th grade. Guess what? Today, she would not be given that opportunity. Or I should say when this is fully implemented. So, Race to the Top does require that the states modify their state laws to allow sharing of the data with the federal government. This information will be shared with the U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Commerce, the unions, and anybody else that says they have a need for it, because the FERPA laws have been vetted, and there is nothing that will restrict people from going to the U.S. Department of Education and saying, I have a need for that information so I can determine how to set up my training program for the kids that are going to come through my training program to go work in my factory. So, and this information is being collected and is being stored. There's a company called, where did I put it? There it is. Company called In Bloom, and they're another new nonprofit organization brought about by the Melinda Gates Foundation and the Carnegie Corporation, and they're gathering all that information up and storing it in these big data warehouses. And supposedly all of the personal identification information is being stripped from it, but gee, aren't we getting our privacy invaded by all of that other technology these days? Wonder if they're really stripping that information out. So, they are setting up that comprehensive view into each student's history. And oh, by the way, those records that they developed for our kids, you remember back when Arnie Duncan said he wants it all from child to career, tomb to womb, or womb to tomb. These records stay with the kids throughout their education and go to their employer when they move on. So, Common Core. One of the things that it is doing, it is setting up a diversion for the real problem. The real problem really is today the school choice, the Trojan horse, which is the loss of elected representation through publicly funded school choice and charters with the unelected councils, which are Soviet forms of government and regionalism. As soon as any school accepts federal dollars, they answer to the federal government, and they will have Common Core implemented in their schools. So those nice little charter schools that have either a corporation or an organization that's heading them up and not a school board that's elected by you, they get to do what they want. And if the parents don't like what's going on in that charter school, who do they go to? Where's their recourse? They can't hire or fire the person that's heading up that charter school. I guess you can take the child out. I wouldn't put my child in it to begin with. And this, by the way, is something that I came across. I don't know, I'm a John Bircher. And some people think John Birch Society's out there, but I don't. They have been consistent throughout their history. They stand for the Constitution. They stand for limited government. They have an affiliation called Freedom Project Education. If you are interested in this, it is American classical curriculum that is K through 12. It is an online school. It is not a virtual school. They actually attend classes through an online classroom. If you're interested, stop, you can look it over. But they are actually introducing kids, second grade, to Latin. So, Common Core. Our children are not human capital, and they are certainly not common. They are individuals who deserve an individual education. We must take control of our children's education back. We have got to stop this at whatever cost we have. There are a number of legislative bills that are in Tallahassee right now. And there are those that need to be passed that won't see the light of day, and there are those that are going through that should be stopped. One of them is the digital classroom. Don Gates supports it wholeheartedly. Rick Scott's put $40 million aside to help. There is a line item in the budget this year for digitizing the classroom. This bill has made it out of committee. It will see a vote in the chambers, and it will pass. It will require each district to set up a plan to get their schools completely digitized, technology into the classroom. It removes the parents, even more so the Common Core, because everything will be on the computer. Parents will never see a stitch of homework. Teachers become classroom monitors. The biggest issue is we can't afford it. The responsibility for funding that past the initial amount of money that comes out of Tallahassee will be put back on the taxpayers. Our schools will have to be upgraded for power and for bandwidth in order to get all the children onto the internet and to power all of those computers. And when we have one of those lovely storms called a hurricane come through and we're sitting there without power for weeks, how are we educating our kids? So that one needs to be stopped, but that one will go through. And the one that needs to go through that will not see the light of day, that is still buried in committee, hasn't even made it out of its first, and I've been told by a friend of mine who is a representative from my area, the Panhandle, that House Bill 25 and Senate Bill 1316 will not see the light of day, and the reason they won't is this is an election year. And they all bow at the altar of Jeb Bush. And Will Weatherford and Don Gates insist that Common Core will be implemented fully in Florida schools starting next year. They will do nothing to stop it. So, what I have, and I've got some other bills up here, and I've run way over my time. I've got a lot of things I can share with you. This is one of the recommended reading that's on the new English language arts. Fourth grade, 50% will be informational, 50% will be literature. This is one of the literature. Now, by the way, the informational are really ridiculous things that will not encourage children to read. But this one is very explicit and incestual rape and child, sexual abuse. And this is on the recommended reading list. Do not accept that your representatives in Tallahassee know nothing about Common Core, because I personally delivered a copy of this reprint of a New American article on Common Core and data mining to every legislator in Tallahassee, 160 plus one, Rick Scott. They have all received this. Oh goodness gracious, quick. But they have all received this. So do not let them say that they don't know anything about Common Core. They do, if they bother to read it. And then finally, somewhere up here, I have, well, I don't know where they are, but over on where I was sitting on the table, I have 3 cards. So if you choose to do this, make sure you get a set of 3 cards. They are pre-printed, pre-addressed to Will Weatherford, to Don Gates, and to Rick Scott that say, we need to put our children first. We need House Bill 25, Senate Bill 1316, to come out of committee and go to the floor of each chamber for a vote and be passed. All you have to do, sign it, put your zip code with your signature, put a postage card stamp on it, I think it's 34 cents if I recall correctly, drop it in the mail, sooner the better. Take multiple sets, get them sent on. This is one of those things that we can do to get their attention. Last year, in one day, they got 3,000 phone calls from concerned citizens, parents, and teachers that said we need to stop Common Core, and that was what set off Rick Scott and his executive order to close out a park, which is stupid, because we're not. We're still doing it. Just using air instead. But stop by and pick those up. I have plenty. I personally funded those. I ordered 2,500 of each and had a lot left over. And the session ends on the 2nd of May. So we need to rush and get those in. And I think with that, I have finished, and I again apologize for holding you so much later than I should. I think I took away our question and answer time.
I think people are still going to have that. I must be honest, I thought I knew about Common Core. I guess I really didn't know anything. To say it's evil, I think, is probably one of the largest understatements of the evening. It's pure evil. It's terrible. So, questions, we start with the gentleman here.
Can you give us an example of that first grade questionnaire? Something that was on our list of the parent.
Oh, the one?
One was sexual identity. What identity?
Yeah, the one was sexual identity, the other one was like if you were in a, severe illness of a parent or family member, death of a parent or caretaker, divorce, students received a threat of violence, witness to community violence, severe illness of a student, experienced child abuse, either physical, emotional, or sexual, witness to domestic violence in the home, placed in foster care, moved from one foster home to another, experienced natural disaster, hurricane, tornado, etc., changed schools one or more times during a school year, financial problems in the home. What's that their business? Alcohol or drug abuse in family, substance abuse problems, pregnancy, one or more psychiatric hospitalizations, attempted suicide or expressed suicidal thoughts, homelessness, the sexual identity issues, parent or caretaker incarcerated, juvenile offender, health problems, asthma, diabetes, sickle cell, etc., and then others.
Sickle cell. Are you saying that this will follow someone not only through their school years, but into their place of employment?
Yes. That is the plan.
That's part of Common Core.
It's the data mining. Okay, let me explain something. Take it back just a second. Back to that race to the top grant money. It's not part of Common Core itself, but it's part of the qualification for the race to the top grant money. So the states, when they accepted that money, when Florida accepted that $700 million, we said we would implement Common Core in the testing that did that. We tied Common Core to the teachers' retainability and merit pay, which by the way is wrong. The longitudinal system, so the data collecting system was one of those, and then the failing schools, and then there's expanding charter schools is another one. There were 5 criteria that we signed up for. So it's not actually Common Core, but because it was taken on at the same time as Common Core, it's being implemented concurrently.
I know Indiana and Oklahoma have effectively pulled out of Common Core. Is that accurate?
Smoke and mirrors.
Pardon?
Smoke and mirrors. Indiana. I'm a Hoosier. I have an article. I think I have it with me. I'll look. But basically what happened with Indiana was they said we are going to not accept Common Core, and they turned everything back to the federal government, but not the money, as far as I know. I don't think they paid the money back, which is fine by me. Depending on the grade level, it varies from 70 to 90% of the new Indiana standard was taken straight from Common Core standard. Yes, sir.
I think everybody agrees that separation of church and state is appropriate. But until we separate school and state, we're going to continue running around stamping out fires like this. People got to get rid of this idiotic notion that there's such a thing as a free school. And they got to start writing a damn check every month for whatever school they want to send their children to, and have them educate them in the way that is appropriate for that child. You can have several children in a family, and not every damn one of them is going to respond to the same sort of education. And if we have education privately like that, be just as many choices as we have to eat. You might want a taco, she wants a pizza, somebody wants a burger, somebody wants a hot dog, somebody wants to eat vegetarian. When we have real choice like that, when they get the state the hell out of it, that is the only answer. Anything where you keep fooling around with these screwballs up there, it's just going to go from Common Core to whatever the hell's the next thing if you ever were to defeat it. It will never work until we separate school and state.
Let me tell you, I need to be above board with everybody. I'm running for school board in Santa Rosa County. My platform is stop Common Core, stop standardized testing, get the federal government out of our schools, get the state out of our schools. Schools need to be returned to community and parental control. The classroom needs to be returned to teacher control. We have got to get sanity back into our schools. And the only way we can do it is returning to the old concept of a community school that is paid for by the community, by the parents, so that we know what's being taught to those children. I have a concept that's called Little Red, White, Blue Schoolhouses. I'm happy to share with anybody that's interested in it. It's basically a community homeschool. And I've also written a piece of legislation, which I know will never see the light of day, but it basically gives a school district the option to opt out of Common Core and to put into place a curriculum that they choose, which I recommend American Classical Curriculum.
Is it true that I read every teachers union up in some areas of New York State are pretty much opposed to Common Core and have been raising some ruckus? And
Yes.
why is there a difference?
The NEA has actually come out and said that they, just like Obamacare, it was implemented in a very ineffective way. The NEA has said they really don't have a problem with Common Core, but they have a problem with the way it's been implemented. So they think we need to back completely away from it and start over again, but they're not against having a standard that's nationalized.
I'm homeschooling two of my children, and I also have a 7-year-old who is attending a public high school, and he's getting ready to take his SAT and be trying to go to USF. And I'm just wondering, since I'm homeschooling my kids, I've been told by other friends that in the future they're going to put requirements on homeschoolers, and so I understand that. So I'm just wondering, what can I do if I'm going to be enforced? I even talked to a school teacher, and she said there's going to start enforcing the homeschoolers to make sure they have physical education at the school, or you have to pay for some education somewhere besides just having it home, because at home isn't good enough to pay us to their standards for.
They do not want parents to have control of their children's education.
Right.
They will pass legislation in Tallahassee that will limit the ability for you to do what you see as right for your child. for children. You will also find that because textbooks and worksheets and the pre-written curriculum are all Common Core compliant. I recommend to you go to old bookstores, get old textbooks, use those to teach your children, and make sure your children are educated. My answer to all that, I will not comply. Those children are mine.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask Debbie to, Preston?
Yeah, I saw in the news they're going to change the national SAT test. Is that to comply with the lower standards of Common Core?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. As I said, David Coleman, the president of the College Board, is the one that wrote. He's responsible for the English language arts standards, and he's already started down that path.
Ask Debbie to put a ticket on here. She's going to have toast in the morning.
All right, I need my glasses, so I can read it. Okay.
550259. Those are already made up in sets, right there in that stack. You can just take what you want. Oh! She's my friend.
Before we end, I want to thank Debbie very much. She came a long way to give this presentation tonight, so please give her a standing. Congratulations. Remember, the next meeting will be on the 14th of May, which will be on Wednesday. We should have a great evening.